Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Random Vlogging. I know I said that I don't like to do this too often, but today we're gonna have a little bit of serious pie. The reason that I'm talking about this is a friend of mine is having to deal with this specific subject right now, and it's something that I've had to deal with in my past, and it's really hitting close to home right now. And I want to talk about it and kind of get it out into the open, and just hopefully start up a dialogue about this, and maybe get a few more people aware of what's happening, and hopefully help a few people. The topic I want to talk about today is psychological and emotional abuse. If I was to ask most of my fans to describe an abusive relationship, more often than not, they would describe someone in the relationship physically attacking or hurting the other person in the relationship. Because that's what we think about when we hear the word abuse. Domestic violence, all that stuff, you just think of, in general, a man hitting a woman. Because that's a very large percentage of domestic violence that gets shown on television, is guy beats up a girl, goes to jail over it. Psychological abuse is different, obviously. And in many ways, it can actually be significantly more damaging than physical abuse. Mostly because broken bones will knit, cuts will heal, bruises will fade away. But some of the scars that you will get from an emotional abuser will last the rest of your life. They will change how you view the world. And it's sad that it happens. And the worst part about it is a lot of people don't realize that it's happening because it doesn't seem, from the outside, it doesn't seem as bad as somebody coming up and just punching someone. It's visual. We've all been hit by something. Maybe you've never been in a fist fight, but you stubbed your toe or something. You know what pain is. And it's very visual. You can see bruises and cuts and things like that. It's very simple. But emotional abuse cuts a different way. There's a lot of different things that technically fall under the umbrella term of psychological abuse. Verbal abuse is one of them, which is another that's fairly easy to recognize. If one member of the relationship is continually calling the other, and it can technically go both ways at the same time. You can have two psychological abusers abusing each other and feeding into each other. Specifically with verbal abuse, but in general, it tends to be, when it gets dangerous is when it tends to be a one-way street, to abuser to abusee. Verbal abuse, again, very, very simple. If someone's calling someone names and saying horrible things, you can tell. But the other aspects of psychological and emotional abuse are much more difficult to see. And on their own, you don't think about them as being horrible, but they are. They're incredibly damaging. The thing about psychological, and to be honest, abuse in general is it has not so much to do about hurting someone or making them feel bad, and everything to do about controlling someone. Control is a huge part of any abusive relationship. It's all about control. They need to control the other person to make themselves feel better. Abusers, I'm not going to say this is 100% true, because there are some truly evil people in the world. I've met a couple of them. They're not fun. But abusers in general don't do it because they enjoy inflicting pain on other people and suffering on other people. They do it because they have such low self-esteem and low opinions of themselves that the only way that they can make themselves feel better is that they choose to make other people feel worse than they feel. And I'm not trying to create sympathy for abusers, because what they're doing is wrong, and it is a choice. It's not an involuntary thing. They are choosing to do it. But 9 times out of 10, it's not because they're evil, malevolent people. It's because they're sick and they're choosing to deal with their illness in a very negative way. So emotional abuse. Like I said, verbal abuse can be one of it, but one of the other things that a lot of people don't think about is just the idea of being dismissive to someone. It's a way to control them, is basically to tell them, you don't know what you're talking about. Your opinion is not worth as much as mine is, so I'm not going to give it value. It could be a conversation between two people where the other person is saying something like, you know what, this really upsets me. Why are you doing this? And the abuser responds with something like, why does it upset you? It shouldn't. It doesn't matter. Which is basically telling the victim that their feelings and their opinions don't matter. That it doesn't matter that they're not feeling good. They shouldn't. It's their fault that they're feeling bad, not the abuser. And that's incredibly damaging because it makes them feel worthless. It makes them feel like the emotions and the feeling and the turmoil that they're going through is their own fault. And they're causing it, not the abuser. And it's a way to control them. Another thing that a lot of people, it technically sounds like a good idea from the outset, is what's called, I can't remember the actual term, but I think it's avoidance, where they simply will refuse to acknowledge an argument. And at first you sit there and go, wait a minute, isn't that a good thing? They're not arguing, they're not yelling at each other, that's a good thing. Well, not really, because it does the same thing as belittling. They basically say, you know, as soon as an argument stops, they say, I'm not going to talk about this, and they walk away. And by doing this, again, they're telling their partner that their opinions, the thing that they want to talk about, is not even valuable enough to have a discussion and to shoot it down. They just say, no, I'm not going to talk about it. You are not worth talking with. You're worthless. And again, it feeds into this idea of it's your fault that you feel this way. You need to deal with it. I'm not going to. It's not my job to deal with this. It's your job to deal with it. And it's incredibly damaging. And it hurts unbelievably because the victim has all these emotions and they're trying to fix the situation. They're like, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't like this. I don't want to be in this type of relationship. And they try and fix it, and they try and talk to this person that's making them feel just horrible. And the person's response is, you don't matter. It's not that I don't care about you. You're not worth caring about. There's a large difference between I don't care about you and you are not worth caring about. And that's what it is. And another way that they can sit there and control people is by using a lack of emotion, kind of the cold shoulder. If you do something wrong, they abstain from having anything to do with you, and they leave you alone and vulnerable. And putting back into the control, they'll try and control other parts of your life as well. You won't be allowed to leave the house. You won't be allowed to spend your own money without talking to them. These are all aspects of control that are textbook definitions of emotionally abusive relationships. And that's what will happen is they will sequester you away from everything, and then they will just abandon you to punish you. And they're not hitting you. They're not calling you names or anything like that. They're abandoning you to your lonely, in your mind, worthless self. And it's horrible because we want to belong. We want human contact. We want to be around human people for the most part. There's some people that prefer to be alone. But for the most part, if you're in a relationship, you're doing it because you want human contact. You want to be a part of someone's life. And they will cut you off from everything and then abandon you to teach you a lesson so that they have more control. So that the next time you have an argument, you won't even think about it. You'll drop your argument simply because you don't want to have to deal with them abandoning you again. And again, this creates a mental state that is unbelievably damaging. Because there are few things in this world that will mess you up more than feeling and believing that you have no worth. Because then you will do things that someone that believes in themselves, that thinks that they're a valuable person, won't. You will do dangerous things. You might turn to drugs or alcohol, things like that, because it doesn't matter how badly you destroy your body. You have no worth. Pickle your liver and then cut it out. You're not worth anything. You might start turning towards promiscuity or just dangerous habits, because again, you have no worth. It doesn't matter if people use you as a sex toy and then throw you away when they're done, because you're worthless. And these are the kind of things that happen when you are in an abusive relation long enough, is you start to believe that, and it affects the rest of your life. And then the one thing that I'm not sure anyone thinks about unless they've actually experienced it is lying. My first relationship was, I'm not 100% positive on this, but I'm fairly certain that my first girlfriend was a pathological liar. Lied about everything. I mean, literally everything. I could ask her the same question twice in about 15 minutes and get two different answers that completely contradicted each other. But I believed her because she was my girlfriend. You believe your girlfriend. That's what you do. You know, you give her the benefit of the doubt because she's your girlfriend. And I convinced myself at that point, I was 17 at the time. I'd never had a girlfriend before. I had convinced myself that that was as good as it was going to get. That I wasn't good enough to have a good relationship. I needed to take whatever it was that I could get. And that was her. And it turned into a year, almost 2 years, of just hating myself. And good things were happening to me. Amazing things. I was in college. I was learning so much. I learned to perfect my craft, which was acting at the time. I was in jazz band, which I loved. I learned a new instrument. I made a lot of amazing friends. I toured Texas and New Mexico with my choir. I had bronchitis the entire time. So all these good things were happening to me, but I felt worthless because all she did was lie, and she used it to control me. She used it to convince me to not speak to my friends that I had known throughout high school. She used it to distance me from everyone I knew, whether it was my parents, my friends at school, my friends at college, my best friend whom I'd known since the 3rd grade. She would lie and create these realities where they were all horrible people that were trying to break us up. And so I had to choose between either her or them. And it was horrible. And I didn't realize how much it affected me until years later. I have a very hard time believing people that I know. For a while, I had people I'd known for years that I couldn't believe a word that came out of their mouth. Not because they were dishonest at all, but because she had lied so often, and I had just given her the benefit of the doubt so many times that I couldn't believe anyone else. And it's a weird feeling being in a conversation and not remembering most of the conversation because you spent the entire time watching body language and thinking about word choice to figure out where the lies were. And that's how these abusive relationships work, is they will use these lies to influence you and to put you in places, because with lies, they can make up anything. And if they're confident enough and you feel bad enough about yourself, you'll just believe them. No, honey. You were supposed to pay the rent this month. So the reason we're getting evicted is it's your fault. No, we didn't have that conversation where I told you I had put the check in the mail. You told me you were going to take care of it, and now it's your fault, and I'm going to blame you for it. And you have to find a way to fix it because it's not my problem, it's yours. That's how it goes. And it's horrible, and it changes you. Being in a relationship like that will color every relationship you have since. And it's it's not something I would wish on anyone. So again, this has been really heavy, and I apologize about the length, but this is something that's hit really close to home, and I want people to be aware of what this is. So in the doobly-doo below, I'm going to have a couple different links to websites that talk about emotional abuse, how to tell if you're in an abusive relationship, and I'm also going to have a phone number. And the phone number is going to be the I think it's called the National Abuse Hotline. I'm not 100% sure, but it's a hotline that you can call if you think you're in an abusive relationship, and they can talk to you, and they can tell you what you can do, and they can help you get out of it. The biggest thing to remember about this is if you're in an abusive relationship, if you're being abused by your significant other, by your parent, by a teacher, abusive relationships can take place in a lot of different places. The thing that you need to remember is it's not your fault. You didn't do anything to deserve this. What they're doing has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. Don't blame yourself for it. It's not because you accidentally did this. It's not because you did something wrong. None of it is your fault. And you deserve better. You deserve to be in a relationship where they love you, where they care about you, where they make you feel amazing, and where you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that they care about you. And you deserve to feel like you're worth something, like you're the most special person in the world, at least for a little bit. You don't deserve any of this, and it's not your fault. All right? Again, that's all for me this week. I promise, or today, I promise tomorrow I will have something a little bit lighter. Again, I don't like getting too serious pie too much, but this is an important subject, and I really want people to know. If you feel comfortable, I welcome you in the comments below to share your story about how you made it through. If you're worried, if you need someone to talk to, the hotline will help. All of these other things will have links about things to do. If you just want to talk to me, my life is kind of crazy, but I'll do what I can to help. Shoot me a personal message on Twitter. If you're following me, more likely than not, I'm following you. And I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to help you out as much as I can. A lot of my advice might be you need to talk to a professional because they can do so much more than I can. But I'll help in any way that I can, because this is terrifying. It's not fun, but you can get through it. You can heal. The scars will eventually get better. They'll never quite go away, but they will heal, and you can get through it. All right, again, that's all for me today. Bye-bye.